And record. Hi, I'm King Chocolate from LA.
And I'm Queen Vanilla of the French Riviera.
And together we make Chocolate and Vanilla Swirl.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So what are we going to talk about today, Ann?
Yeah, so our theme today is being the best we can become. And I know we both have an angle on this, so I'd like to invite you, Chocolate, to give your perception and your experience and what you're doing with being the best you can become.
Yeah, well, thank you there, Vanilla. I have an experience that I'm going through right now where I have isolated myself to my RV out of my home, away from my wife and daughter, because I got this idea from a fighter from many years ago in the 1950s. His name is Rocky Marciano. He went out undefeated champion, 49 fights, 49 wins, 43 knockouts. And what he did before every fight was he would isolate himself for like 3 months. So what happened was they would observe this guy in the ring and observe the way he fought. And he would fight like just any normal person. And they would try, like trainers would try to use the same techniques for their fighters. And it never really worked the same, not the same results. What they didn't know was, or what they didn't focus on or even think to do was, what did this man do to prepare to get in the ring with their fighters? See, it was all about the preparation. It didn't have much to do with being in the ring in front of that fighter. The most powerful thing was him preparing 3 months in advance, focusing, getting laser focused on who was going to be his opponent. And so I got to thinking, I said, this man has isolated himself. And they also did one of the Rocky movies based on the same thing that happened where Rocky was going against an opponent. He went to Russia, isolated himself for months, came out a winner. And it was all due to the preparation. It wasn't about the way he stood or fought or threw a punch. It was about it was the mental preparation months ahead of time. So I said to myself a few months ago, I said, I just came up with that idea of what if I did that same, that same thing where I just isolated myself from my comforts, which is in my house and RV. So I said, well, what if I go in my RV and I stay there for a month? And I did that. And boy, Ann, I tell you, I got super focused. I felt more committed. I felt more, it's like my thought process just kind of exploded. I just felt more, I don't know, just more laser focused because of that.
So what sort of things did you do? You were in isolation, but what did you do with your mind to develop that sense of focus? And I also heard connection with what you're going for. So were there any mental exercises you did? And what kind of things, how did you do the preparation apart from being in isolation? What did you do?
It was really a thing of me knowing and believing that I'm spending time away from my family for what purpose? It's my main motivator. Because if I take time away from my home, away from my family, I better make it work. I better do something with that. That whole mentality of, if I'm going to do this, it has to be for a great purpose.
So did you do visualization exercises, for example?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't do any of those type of exercises.
Okay.
I just said to myself, if I'm going to do something like this, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be for a purpose. Why take yourself away from your home, your comfort, your family, if you're not going to push yourself to a higher limit? And that was my focus right there. If you're going to do this, make it work. Do it for a reason.
Now I understand, I get the purpose and I get the reason, and I understand that very clearly. So there you are in your RV with not the usual distractions you have. So what did you do? Like you mentioned about, I think before, Rocky, you used to envisage the opponent. Well, obviously you're not dealing with opponents, but do you envisage clients or or what is it that you do with that precious time you have in isolation from your comforts? I mean, it's a very precious time and it's a high commitment to be doing it, but you're not just sitting there daydreaming, are you? Or are you?
Not sitting there daydreaming, even though there were times, yes, I would daydream. But my daydreams are daydreams of how can I achieve more?
Okay.
Those are the kind of daydreams I do have.
Okay.
And, you know, that's a really good question you asked too. That's a really good point you brought up. Like, what is it that what did I do? Like, what did I, what did I indulge myself with, right?
And or I would use another word than indulge, because this is very focused. So it's like you could have been reading motivation books, and I mentioned visualization, you weren't doing that, but there'd be something that you'd be actively directing your mind towards to fulfill the purpose you had, which is powerful.
Mm-hmm. You know, the things that I do, I mean, this is who I am. Even when I'm home with my family, I do these. But now, being isolated, I'm doing them on a bigger scale.
Okay.
So, like, an example would be, at home with my family, I would just cut myself off from this way of thinking just to spend time with my wife or daughter.
Sure.
Coming to the RV to be secluded, I would spend hours more in that same frame of mind, that way of thinking. I would just put more time into it.
Okay.
Made me sharper. I was just able to absorb more from being by myself because there are no distractions. Like I could be home and I'm into a thought and my daughter will come in, hey, Dad, so on and so forth, my wife or the dog, and I would get distracted. Mm-hmm. So I'm the kind of person who I am focused and I do things that will accumulate in my life to get me to a higher place. But coming to the RV, being secluded like this, I'm doubling that effect. And that's what that is.
So what is the higher place, if you can say, that you're heading yourself towards?
Oh, goodness gracious. Ann, you asked some great questions here. Why are you asking all these great questions, Ann?
Because I've got you on the spot.
Right, yeah, right. You got me on the spot, right. Got to switch this around and put it on you. That's okay. I love it, though. I love being put on the spot.
I know you do.
It tests my resolve.
You got plenty of resolve.
Yeah, right. So, what was that question again?
Well, I'm curious to know what this higher is that you're going for, because there's power in what you're saying, but it's like, what is it for you that has you so engaged and committed and connected to something? That sounds like a really big dream, or I don't know.
You know, as I continue to go, just my journey in my life, my day to day, I'm becoming more aware of my past.
Okay.
My history, like the past history of humans and how we came to be and the things that we've taken ourselves through over the centuries, how people have connected and interacted with one another, the highs and the lows of mankind. And I'm getting more and more into those types of studies, reading material and watching documentaries, having conversations. And it's brought me to a place that what I've been doing up to this point, I felt the need to become more of like a figure, a figure in action for people. Mm-hmm. I don't know. How can I say?
Well, one of the things I've observed with you is you're very knowledgeable about your heritage, such as it might be, of the slave industry as it happened. You're very knowledgeable about that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I perceived when you started doing videos, my perception was it was as though your energy was depressed. I don't mean you're walking around being miserable, because that's not the person I know at all. But when I first saw those videos, it's like the energy of who you are was just like, that's not my chocolate. And And then I was talking to a friend about this perception. I was a bit more to say about it, but anyway. And she said that when the slaves were in the middle 19th century, and in a family, if the boys were very animated and lively, the mothers would keep their energy down, because if they were too vibrant, they'd get beaten. The slave owners would beat them. And this perception was that this, even beyond slavery, it was a kind of tradition with the mothers that they keep the boys' energies down. They didn't need to when they were no longer slaves, but it was kind of, it became a way of being. And I just thought, well, that's interesting, because that could be part of your heritage. I don't know, but I mean, maybe that's something that was done. Mind you, having mentioned to you that I thought some of your first videos, the energy was flat. Your more recent ones, they're not. So that's changed already. But it's like,
there's something to be said about practicing and learning how to speak more of what it is inside of you.
Sure.
So.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But I totally can relate with your, well, I want to say heartfelt motivation to stand up for who you are and what you can accomplish, and going for that, and standing in as a presence for people who can learn from you, benefit from you, have you as a role model or something of that nature, which I think is fantastic myself.
Mm.
In my not so humble point of view. And of course I'm right.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the Queen is always right. Let's
the Queen. I like that. The Queen.
Her Royal Highness.
Yes, yes.
Well, mind you, I've been watching programs on Queen Victoria, and she was quite a lady, I have to say. The Vanilla Victoria is kind of close, isn't it?
Yeah. So are you preparing yourself to step into that role there, Miss?
No way. I'm happy to stay vanilla on the French Riviera. I ain't going in that other direction. That's too much. But she was married to a prince. She wasn't married to the king.
The
king's
yeah.
You still get to be your Royal Highness.
Yes. And what about yourself? What is your take?
Being the best you can become. Well,
the best you can become. Yeah.
Bit of a backstory with that. I was asked to give a talk to a ladies' lunch group in Monaco last month, a couple of months ago. And I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And the organizer said, well, something inspirational. The last speakers we had weren't very inspirational. So, okay, fine. So I went out for a walk, like you do, and I said, okay, God, what on earth am I going to talk about? And the words that came up was, be the best you can become. And that happened to be the subtitle of my third book. So I did the talk, and I did my preparation.
And you just do a promo for your book?
I wish.
No promo out there. What's the name?
The name of the book is Super You, Be the Best You Can Become. However, having said that, it's not presently in print. So one of the goals I have is I've got 3 books that are now out of print that need to go into print. So they're on a side burner. I mean, anyway, that's a whole other story I won't get into right now. I just carry on. So be the best you can become. So when I picked up the book, I hadn't looked at it for ages, and I saw a term I was using, energetics. And that's part of what the book was about. And it's this mastery of oneself. It's the art and science of personal mastery. So my be the best you can become is that of mastering my inner dynamic, if you will. So if my energy drops down, it's to be aware of it and put it back up, for an example. So I've actually put myself on a 90-day, the word that comes to mind is mission. It's a bit grand, but anyway, so my current 90-day mission is to be the best I can become. And what happens with it is I get all the obstacles and all the reasons why I am not the best I could become. So I get to reframe those. I change the narrative into something which is more empowering and empowered. So my process is a very inner one, and I don't have an outer objective related to it. It's the process of being the best I can become. And the emphasis is on the being and not the doing. because there's a lot of doing going on in the world, and at this time, not as much being. I mean, the sort of thing you're doing by going in isolation is a lot of being. So there's a real parallel, as it happens, between what we're both doing. So be the best. And for me, it does have, interestingly, as I saw your energy, as I was perceiving it as being flat, it mirrored to me how I have lived my life. My energy has been lived in a flat way, and I'm coming out. I'm really beginning to be more fully who I am, and it's about time. And I'm, lollygagging or gagging around, sort of having a nice time and everything. But there's more. I've got more to give, and I'm very much with you on that track of I've got more to give. I'm keen to give it, and I want to give from the inner strength of who I am. So it's that connects with people.
Yeah. And how long have we been knowing one another? Maybe a year, something like that?
If that, maybe, but I started coming on your webinars, which I really enjoyed. And I don't think it's much, so it could be about 8 months or something like that.
Maybe. It seems longer than that to me. I was just thinking how you were talking about yourself and how you are, it's like transforming into being more of who you want to be. And I've noticed a shift in you as time goes on, month after month, how you just, it's like coming out of a cocoon into a butterfly. Not that you were a cocoon, because you were always pretty lively, but I know that you are becoming more of that. Like more of that is emulating from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't see it, obviously, because I'm just in it the whole time.
Right.
But that's definitely what I'm working on, so I can increase my capacity for connecting with people, to connecting with the heart. I'm working at the moment with a couple of people whose energy is really flat, and it's like below zero kind of flat. And I'm loving assisting them to awaken into who they are as people. And it's a slow process. It's a very gentle, very sensitive process. I love doing this. I know once they've got out of there's a kind of like they've got stuck in a pit. As they get above the pit, then the exciting bit is they've got their energy together and they can fly. So it's a different thing than a cocoon and butterfly, but it's a similar kind of idea. It's helping people to break free of whatever their limitations, that sometimes those limitations goes way back, like mine goes back to when I was 12 or 13. And it's now, I mean, I've worked on it, I suppose, but now I'm really working on it, because that thing's got to move for me to get out and really do the work that I love and want to do to serve others.
Yeah. Well, we don't have enough time for me to go back and talk about how far back I've been feeling limitations.
Okay.
I got some stories.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, maybe we'll come back and leave them wanting more, and we'll come back with some great stories. They're going to want to hear them.
Yes.
They're good stories.
Yes. I think so.
Okay.
So this was good, Anna. I thank you very much for just allowing us to have this time together to come out and just show people more of a connection, how two people can come together from different worlds, have an interact together in the way we do, can have a good time and talk from matters of the heart.
I totally echo that, and I appreciate, because you were putting on the webinars that I came to, many of them, and I really enjoyed them. And I think in this world, what I love is that we can learn so much from people of other backgrounds, ethnicities, if you will. It's a rich world, and when we can come together and just share, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to love and be loved. I mean, let's be basic about it. That's what everyone wants, whatever our background. And then I find it fascinating, the stories that have brought us to these points.
Do you think that Hitler wanted to be loved?
Well, he kind of took a role of leadership to be noticed.
Right, yeah.
And sometimes people do weird things to get attention.
Yeah.
So
even someone, yes.
You were thinking of someone who wants to get attention.
I said even someone like, you're right. Yeah. Even someone like Hitler it looks for love, or he looked most of the time.
I think even.
Yeah.
And people who are expressing in a way that you'd have to say was less than loving or less than ideal, at some point they've had experienced a distortion about what love is, or what their needs, or have to fulfill their needs for love and attention. Because basically, if a child isn't getting attention, it's got to find it another way. And I don't know enough about the history of Hitler, but I notice in everyone, whoever I look at, whatever bad way they may be in, deep down, everyone's got a heart. If we didn't have a heart, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, so true.
And I think it's awakening of compassion for people who are less than well-behaved, put it in a sort of simplistic way.
Yeah.
That deep down, they want love and validation.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about next, Anne? So we're going to end this, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about what is it?
Yes, our next one that everyone's going to want to listen to is the business of marriage.
Ooh.
Oh, yes.
All right, so we're going to sign out right now, and we're going to get to it. So thank you all for tuning in and watching our video, and we hope to bring lots more in the future. Did you want to say bye?
And we'd love your comments and anything you have to suggest. We're keen to improve, so anything you'd like more of or less of, we'd love to hear that too.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good. You stopped your recording, Ann?